Hey, everybody, it's exciting times. I'm here with Nate Aguinaga tonight. Sergeant Aggie, he is the author of, I'm going to tell you, look, this is one of my favorite books. It really is. And I'm lucky to have one, I guess. Apparently, you can't get them just everywhere. But his new book, Lifer, is out. And we're going to be talking about that, among other things, tonight. So, yeah, y'all come on in, hang out. This is a good time. This is a good time. I want to just share for the group as we get started. Watch this. Enjoy this with me. Let me pull Nate on real quick. Hey, Nate. Yeah. What? Let's watch this. Let's watch this here together real quick.
What's the matter, Davy?
Bobby Tillman called me a mean name.
What happened, Davy?
Well, I called and invited him over to play Hot Wheels, and then he asked about what Dad did in the Army. When I told him, he said, "But was he airborne?" And when I told him no, Bobby laughed and said he wasn't going to play cars with a bitch-ass loser.
Oh, I think you should ask your dad about it.
What's the matter, Davy?
Bobby Tillman said I'm a loser because you weren't in the airborne like his dad was.
Listen, Davy, I really wanted to be in the airborne. It just looked too scary. I hope you understand. Now, good night.
What's the matter, dear?
Davy knows. He knows I'm a leg.
Oh my gosh. What do you think, man? Is that's pretty, that speaks a lot.
Dude, I love it. I love it. I saw that on Facebook, about 2 weeks ago. Somebody had that posted on there. I think it was you, actually, Will. And I tell you, that's hilarious, man.
Oh my gosh.
To be on your show with you and your guest, man. Appreciate it. Appreciate you having me.
I'm honored. I'm honored. I'm honored. So tell me about you. Tell me about, where you're from. And let me just take an opportunity to tell you and everybody that might be watching, this is a channel. What we're trying to do is to get our stories told before we're too sick or we're too old to tell them. When we get to our age, we're one doctor visit away from stage 4 cancer. We're brain tumors. All of this started because one of my Jumpmaster buddies, Rob Maggot, his wife called me and said, "Hey, Rob can't remember things anymore. Something's wrong." And so I called him and I said, "Talk to me." And I recorded it, and that became the first episode. And from there, I've interviewed my Sunday school teachers. I've interviewed generals. I've interviewed some of the most treasured sergeant majors in my time. And I'm here tonight with you, and I appreciate it very much. So tell me about you.
Oh, I'm 52 years old. I retired from the Army in 2010. Retired E8, and born and raised in the state of Michigan. And I went into the Army right after high school. 2 months after high school, I was in basic training and went to the 82nd Airborne Division. And the funny part is, like you just said, here I was 5 years ago, and I was telling my wife another story about the 82nd Airborne, just telling her a story about one of my old platoon sergeants. And she started laughing. She goes, "Why don't you write these down in a memoir? Because one of these days you're going to forget. And that way your kids can know about it. And someday your grandkids can learn about what you did in the military." She goes, or maybe even, write a book or something. And so she went into the shower. And while she was in the shower, I had already completed the introduction and the first chapter, or started the first chapter, first couple paragraphs of my first book, Division: Life on Our Den Street, about my time in the 82nd Airborne Division. So that's where I got that.
I love it. I love it. Right. At some point, there's those of us that have been called. I wrote this book, Entangled at 4,000. It's just a group of short stories about my time that I've compiled. Nothing as comprehensive as what you've done. Tell me about what it was like showing up on Ardennes Street. You know, do you remember being that young soldier that shows up and you're wide-eyed and they march you down to the museum and you walk wide and you're like, look at all these heroes and things. Did that, I know that got me big time, wide-eyed. What was it like for you?
I'll be honest with you, Will. It was powerful, man, because, you know, everybody knows about the 82nd Airborne Division and, you know, units like 101st and 10th Mountain and all that. But to actually be there, get assigned there, and then to walk down the street and look at these units that I've only read about or seen movies about, like World War II movies. And that really took me back. And that's how I opened the book up, as you know, just to be in that environment and be proud of being in that environment, you know. I walked past the 307 engineers and so on and so forth. And just when I see all those units, and I'm like, man, I remember seeing a movie about this, about these people. And to be part of that unit was just extraordinary. It was awesome. Yeah.
You remember a particular leader when you were a young private that touched you?
Yeah. I remember a handful of them, man. Sergeant Major X is what I call him in the book. You know what? I'm not going to hold back. I'm just going to come right out and tell you his name. Sergeant Major Thorpe. Everybody remembers Sergeant Major Thorpe, dude. Okay, you can Google him. He's on everything about the 82nd. He is actually Sergeant Major X in my books, especially in Lifer. Sergeant Major Thorpe was hilarious. Not funny as a comedian, but funny as just a powerful leader, man. Like you feared just looking at him. Like you didn't want to look at him. And so I go into detail about experiences with him alone, because at the time he was our brigade command sergeant major at the time.
Isn't it neat how those leaders had such a touch on us, right? I had my own sergeant majors. It's like if you had anything, if you were worth your salt, worth a flip, you had some sergeant major mentoring you in a way that you didn't like sometimes.
Absolutely.
Right?
Every day.
Yeah.
All the time. Yeah, it was crazy. I tell you what, man, it was just a good time, stressful, but good, just good memories, man. And I felt like I just needed to write about it. And I think on your show tonight, this is going to be the first time I'm going to announce that Lifer is actually going to, the second episode is being written right now for a screenplay. I'm not kidding, man. I think our stories, yours and mine, we need to tell our stories to people out there, because if I'm not mistaken, the last time that anybody ever heard of like the 82nd Airborne Division doing wartime things or talking about the 82nd Airborne is like World War II era movies or series. You know what I'm saying? Like A Bridge Too Far, I think was one of the last movies depicted about the 82nd Airborne Division. So, and that's why I wanted to write these books about our experiences. And I just got lucky enough on LinkedIn. I have a team now writing a screenplay. They're on the second episode. It's going to be hopefully a five series or 5 episode series on Netflix. Maybe, I don't know if you got connections or something. Maybe. But
okay, so right now, who's going to play you in the movie? That's what I
know. Who I would like to play me, to be honest with you. I don't know the kid's name, but a young version of me during that time frame. That kid from the karate. What do they call it? The Karate Kid series. Cobra Kai.
Okay.
The young dark complected kid. I think he's Johnny's son or something like that. But my wife said that he would be a perfect depiction of myself back in those days, man. You know.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Yay, that's awesome. Well, congratulations. I think that's great. I think that's great. Tell me about one of the stories in here in your book that I marked. Um, Hold on. Over here in division talks about talks about the time that you passed Jumpmaster school when the black hat said, your time was 4:54. Uh,
Yes.
you know, and you said you could have done cartwheels all the way back to the table. Tell me about becoming a Jumpmaster.
Let me tell you something. I went through that entire course twice because the first time I went through, I failed the written exam. I just took it. I took advantage of it. I was like, "Oh man, I'll pass this. Too easy. I know all this information. I didn't study for it, and I failed the first written exam. So that automatically put me in the category of now you have to pass everything else, or you're going to be a no go for the entire course. And then
Right.
of course you know about PWAC, uh, uh, you know about the JMPI and all that stuff. But so that's what happened to me the first time. But when I got my go, and it took me 3 times to finally get a go in JMPI, and you know that experience. Um, I can't believe they let you drive out of that school. Like they should not allow you to get into a vehicle because you're so excited. You know, your mentality is just so, you're so hyped up, but yet you're getting ready to go on a road driving around with people, man. It was crazy, but it was such a relief to finally pass that. And then of course I went right back to my unit, and the first sergeant gave me a hug. Everybody gave me a hug. The commander, I was like, hey, congratulations. But then the reality set in. Congratulations, Jumpmaster. Now you're going to feel the suck of the reality of it, man.
Right. You're going to do that safety duty on a ODARC 30 mission with a unit you don't have nothing to do with, but yet we had to provide a safety. You're out late at night when you don't have. It's crazy all the things that jump masters do as leaders in their units, but it's a rite of passage in the 82nd Airborne Division. If you're unable to be a jump master in the 82nd, you're not going to be a leader in the 82nd. Not very long.
They tell you that right off the bat. As soon as you get there, they're like, especially when you start reaching NCO rank, they tell you straight up, hey, you're going to be a leader on the ground, and you're also going to be a leader in the air if you expect to make any success in this place. So yeah.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. Tell me, what was one of the toughest things that you had to go through in your career? Do you remember a hard day or night that you had that you thought the sun would never rise, or there was some struggle that you ended up coming through in the end? You got a story for me?
Yeah, probably when I first got to a 3rd Battalion, 505th Parachute Infantry Regiment, my third time PCS into the 505th, after drill sergeant duty, and I was a E6 promotable, and I walked into my unit, and my battalion command sergeant major, he looked at me, and he wasn't going to allow me to be a platoon sergeant in 3 Panther. And I couldn't understand why. I was like, man, I was a squad leader for 4 years. I did my time. I was a drill sergeant for 2 years. I'm Jumpmaster qualified. Why am I not allowed to be a platoon sergeant? He come right out and just told me straight up. He said, in this battalion, you will be Ranger qualified, or you will not be a platoon sergeant in this battalion. And that's the end of the story. He said, I'll put you in operations, but you won't be a platoon sergeant. And I tell you what, it crushed me. I went home to my wife, and I was damn near in tears. And I was like, and I had every intention of going to Ranger school anyway. Just, if you read the book, you'll see the challenges of trying to even get there. But I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my God, my career is going to stop. As an 11 Bravo infantryman, my career is going to stop because this guy is not going to let me be a platoon sergeant that I've earned. I've earned that title, or I've earned that chance to be in that position. And So I went to ANOC. I had, I was already scheduled to go to ANOC anyway for the E7 position and all that stuff. I went to ANOC, and then I went right in from ANOC. I went right into Ranger School. So I graduated Ranger School, and then I eventually, once I graduated, then he immediately made me a platoon sergeant, and everything was fine. But I tell you what, man, I was like, because you don't know if you're going to make it through it or not. It's just one of those schools. It's like I could make it, I could not. So, but I went through it, and I got through it first time go. Yeah.
Rangers lead the way. It's an interesting thing, right? It is interesting the hoops you have to jump through to be the leader, right? If you don't have a certain tab, you don't. It's just really wild about how the Army is not very politically correct. It's like you go get that badge, go get that school, then you can be a leader. And there's something to be said for that, right? Something to be said.
Absolutely. I agree with it now, but yeah, I agree with it. And I tell it in detail in the book, Lifer, of how that could either stop you from ever going past the rank of E7 to be excelling from that position just for a school, and then, if you're an E6 promotable in the 82nd Airborne Division, Ranger School is just a gut check, man. You get through it anyway. You're going to get through it. So.
Right. It's an interesting thing that a little bit of an experience brings you when you get to a certain level, especially when you're doing it, as every day, right? Tell me about what it was like to be 18 hours away from war. Do you remember those stressful nights when we were just at the edge of when you could have a beeper, or you had to call back to the CQ desk every, couple hours. If you went to the mall, you had to sign out at the CQ desk. Do you remember those days? That was
I remember them in detail. We didn't have internet. We didn't even have cell phones. But you're right. We had pagers, and wherever you went in Fayetteville, North Carolina, you had to call and give them the number of the facility you were at. I don't care if it was IHOP. You had to call. You remember those days. You had to call and tell them where you were at. You were on 2-hour recall. And that's another thing that a lot of people really don't understand yet. I don't think that the 82nd Airborne Division is a Tier 1 Rapid Deployment Unit, number 1. Always on 2-hour recall. And I remember there was a time when I was a platoon sergeant years down the road, I wouldn't even drink. I mean, it sucked. I wouldn't even drink alcohol because I was like, I could be called in. Even if we weren't on 2-hour recall, I could be called in at a moment's notice because I had a soldier that might have gotten a DUI or something. And you know how that rolls, man. You get called in and they make you feel almost as guilty as what the soldier did, Yeah.
I'll never forget one New Year's morning I spent riding to Raleigh to go pick a soldier up out of jail who had gotten a little bit too exuberant downtown and beat a couple people up because they were mad because he'd take his shirt off and was dancing in the streets or something. It was crazy. It was crazy. So you know how soldiers get,
Right.
It's crazy, son. Especially the big, strong ones,
Oh yeah. Big time.
So tell me about the transition out of the Army. Tell me about I'm a retiree. I've been out several years now. We actually got out about the same time. Tell me what's happened since then.
Well, I retired in 2010. My wife and I built a house in Northwest Ohio. I retired out of Fort Riley, believe it or not, out of the 1st Infantry Division, which was crazy because I never knew anything about Fort Riley. I was always a Fort Bragg guy. But it was during that time frame, if you remember, where they were just whatever unit was getting ready to deploy next, That's where you were PCS into, permanent change of station. And you remember those days. And so I actually ended up going to Fort Riley, Kansas, my last couple of years of the Army. And then we did a 12, 13-month deployment to Iraq, our last time in 08, 09. And then when I got out, I began the retirement process. Had a good time. I mean, good soldiers. Some of them I knew from the 82nd. We had a command sergeant major. Evans is his name. You might know who he is. He was in the 325, I believe. But anyways, yeah, just a good time. But then when I retired, I pursued my education, got my master's degree, and now I'm a school teacher, high school teacher at my local high school here in town. And I love it, man. I love the kids. The kids love me. We have a good time in class, and it's just fun. It's fun, man. It's a good life afterwards.
I bet you're the best high school teacher in the world, dude. I bet. I mean, I can't imagine. So, yay, that is awesome.
It's fun, man. It's real fun to be with them kids, man, and just teach them about life. Hear their stories, and then compare when we were in high school compared to their situations they have today. Yeah, it's fun,
Tell me a little bit about looking back on your times at war. And we look back on Iraq, and I lost several close friends in Iraq and Afghanistan. I lost several students of mine that were doing things where they weren't trained to do, and put in places that it was just interesting looking back on it, what we were doing and what we were willing to do for our country. Do you remember, or do you have a thought on looking back on that?
Yeah, it's I write a specific chapter about with the 82nd Airborne, my deployment with them in particular, with 3505, and we were stationed at we were at Mahmoudiya, and it was FOB St. Michael, Forward Operating Base St. Michael, and I write a detailed chapter about our experiences there, and we had command and control over Mahmoudiya, Yusufia, and Lutafia, which is just the southern towns just south of Baghdad, and they were Shia controlled villages, and we took command and control over those areas. But it was every day. Every day was combat, mortar rounds hitting us every night, rocket attacks every night. Just everything you can see in the movies. And I write in detail about that. And there's one particular incident I write towards the end of that chapter where we had an individual, a young boy. He was a staff sergeant, young E6. And I had dinner with him that night. They introduced me to him. And they're like, "Hey, Sergeant, come here. We want to introduce you to the new EOD, explosive ordnance disposal individual here, NCOIC. I was like, "Oh my God." I said, "Dude, you got your work cut out for you, bro." And he goes, "Oh yeah, I heard." And it was his first night there. And the next night, excuse me to your listeners and your viewers, he was blown in pieces across ASR Jackson, ammunition supply route Jackson. It was a 4-lane highway, and he was blown in pieces. And my platoon was coming off a patrol, and we were the nearest one to that area. So then we had to not only secure the road, put up a blockade for the road, but then the medics were asking us to help police him up. And that was one of the hardest nights we ever had in that night. So yeah, excuse my language, the shit's real over there. I mean, the shit was real, dude. It's like you see in the Vietnam movies, man. When I was a little kid, when I was a little boy, or a teenager, I wanted to be a Vietnam veteran. And I liked the movies Platoon and Full Metal Jacket and Apocalypse Now. And then once you get, and I was like, man, I want to be a Vietnam veteran, and all this stuff and that. But then be careful what you wish for when you get that age, and then you actually have to go see the stuff. So that was my take in that. I actually write that in the chapter of the book, Lifer. Yeah.
It is very interesting that the dreams that we have as a child, that we end up acting out in some sort of a cosplay or something as what we're doing in real life, right? And I don't know. I pray for peace, and I hope that our standing strong when we did, and the times that we did, caused peace in the world instead of strife and more war. And I can only pray that that's what happened.
I don't know, man. You and me, our opinions are probably going to be identical, but when it comes to like Iraq and all that stuff, I don't think we needed to be there for 8 years, man. I'm just going to come right out and say it. I think 8 years might have been a. Do you remember back in the day when we were young soldiers, we would go kick ass in Saudi Arabia? We would go kick Iraq's ass in Desert Storm. And then guess what? We would leave and bring all of our troops and all of our equipment home after we kicked their ass. Those days ended, man. And
Right.
I don't know why we had to stay and occupy for so many years. It didn't make sense to me. And I'm not trying to get political. I'm just saying the reality was Panama, Grenada, Desert Storm. We used to go kick the enemy's ass, and then we would come home and bring all our troops and our equipment home. Back in the day when you and I were young soldiers, those days ended. And I don't know why.
Well, look, I was listening to Joe Rogan talk to Sean Ryan the other day, and so they're talking, and it's Sean Ryan says, "Look, Brown and Root, KBR, look around at what they did everywhere." And that was the VP's company. And they got all these contracts, and they're just perpetuating more money. That's it. And they're all the shareholders for Lockheed. My dad worked for Lockheed for, look at this. Look at that. Look at this. This is a replica of a poster that's currently hanging on the wall at Lockheed Martin, right? The one that's hanging on the wall at Lockheed Martin Orlando is like way bigger. It's huge. It fills up the whole wall. I'm the poster boy for Lockheed. I get to friggin' say something. I can talk. My dad sold missiles all over the world. He worked on the Star Wars program. He worked on all kinds of things, and it's just wild thinking about what our country does, and we don't get a say so. We just have to salute the flag. I was a heck of a flag saluter, man. You tell me what to do, and I can do it. But don't send me over there on false pretenses and then act like now, like, oh no. Anyway, I'm really having fun hanging out with you and just talking. It really is good to kind of sit around. I write a lot of essays, a lot of stuff that is absolutely political. I have a lot of views. I have all kinds of things, spirituality, all kinds of things that I'm involved with writing. And so I would like to get into talking political stuff one day, but probably not necessarily. We don't need to go off into a diatribe of politics right now,
Whenever you're ready, man. I just voted this morning, as a matter of fact. So yeah, whenever you're ready, we can all get into that. You know where I stand. We're friends. We're friends on Facebook, man. You know where I stand, dude.
I love it. So, so give me, if you could, as you look back on your career and your time and your military, tell me about about a concept or something that you would like to leave to others that you learned about being airborne or being a soldier or being a jump master or being a ranger or being a anything. Tell me about a sort of a message that you might have to how that informed you or helped you.
Just don't quit. And to your viewers out there and listeners, do not quit. Somebody's always going to tell you can't accomplish something. Always in your life. I don't care if you're graduated high school, graduated college, somebody is going to be out there. It might be a representative at your job. It might be a manager. Somebody's going to try to convince you that you're not going to be able to accomplish something that you need or want to do. That's wrong. You can accomplish it. Make it happen. And you know what? That was one of the biggest things that I had people telling me most of my military career, you can't do this. You can't do that. You won't never be able to do this. You won't be able to do that. You know what? That should piss you off enough to go out and make it happen. Okay? Just make it happen and get the job done, and you'll have it. You'll have your career setting, and you'll have your accomplishments. I promise.
So did you ever have a leader that you knew was using the technique of pissing you off enough to get you to do something?
Absolutely. I'm telling you, brother. You know it. Hey, I'm one of those guys, and you might have been one of those guys too when we became the senior ranks. Absolutely. You know what? Hey, you can't get this done. Are you kidding me? You know, you don't have the cojones to do this or whatever, you know, and you just go out and make it happen, dude. You know.
One of the interesting things that I found about being a leader, once you had enough accomplishments under your belt that it wasn't even about a status. You all of a sudden you understood something different than you did before. And so you were able to look at someone else and stand on a level of authority of, that you didn't have before. You know, do you remember a time when you looked around and you said, I got to be the adult here. I'm the adult in this situation. Do you remember a time like that?
Absolutely. Between my ranks of E4 and E5, to be honest with you, look, I'm not gonna bull crap you. When I was in the Fayetteville community, buddies of mine, we would party, get stupid, and you know what I'm talking about. We'd have the parties and we'd get stupid. And then once I made the rank of E5 sergeant, I had to leave my company and go to another company, and that was our battalion policy. So you could leave your friends. You know what I'm saying? You had to push your buddies out. You know what I'm talking about. And so I talk about that too in my book. And that's when I had to change my lifestyle. If you want to make it in the military, you got to calm it down a little bit and quit the partying and all. I'm not saying quit the partying, but tone it down a tad or two. And be a leader. So it taught me to be a leader, and I learned all this directly in the 82nd Airborne Division. Yes, sir.
It is wild how that relentless cycle of the 82nd and the Army causes you at some point. You're like, I gotta stop doing this craziness.
Exactly. Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah, you know how Fayetteville was. Yeah.
But back in the late 80s and the 90s it was off the charts. Honestly, you couldn't smoke marijuana, but it was like drink and drive. Go for it. Come on, we're tapping a keg, Yeah. It was wild,
It was wild. Back in the day, you could probably get away with drinking and driving back on post, and you would probably get away with it 100 times. And then all of a sudden, shortly after the global war on terrorism, you couldn't come on post, man. Everything was locked down, and dudes were getting busted, and NCOs were getting blamed for it. And yeah, I remember all that.
Right.
I was scared shit. I'll be honest with you, I was scared shitless when I was when I was a platoon sergeant, because I'm like, man, am I going to have a soldier get a DUI this weekend or any other alcohol related incident? Because we'd have to get called in and we would get blamed for it. So not blamed for it particularly, but because we weren't hard enough on them or whatever. Yeah, I see it all.
So that, you bring up an interesting leadership dilemma. Okay, right? We are responsible for those who are in our charge, not only off duty, not only on duty, but off duty, right? So we do home visits. We know their kids. We go and see what's going on. As a platoon sergeant, you are like a daddy. You are a daddy like you're daddy to a lot of different people, right? Do you remember a particular situation where you were really, helping someone and really, really, really made a difference?
Yeah, a couple guys, they had personal issues with money, and I would actually, help them out with a few bucks, this and that. They were living in housing. A particular squad leader of mine and his wife, and they were hurting. They had about 3 or 4 kids, and they were hurting. And I would, I'd help them out, give them a few bucks. But then again, I would do that, and then the next night, I would have a soldier who lived in the barracks, who had a few beers, went out, got a DUI, and we would be cruising in a Mustang from a girl he met who owned the Mustang, going down Ardennes Street, 85 miles an hour down Ardennes. And guess what? Guess where I'm at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, Monday morning. I'm in the battalion commander's, command sergeant major's office, man, getting my ass chewed. It's like, what kind of discipline you got going on over there in 3rd Platoon? And I'm just like, Sergeant Major, I got 2 choices, man. I can move them in my house, which I'm not going to do, or I can restrict them to the barracks, which I can't do because they're not in trouble for anything. I mean, it just, how it rolled. A lot of stuff started getting political towards my end state of my time in the 82nd. A lot of stuff, and that was Army wide. That wasn't just the 82nd Airborne. That was Army wide. A lot of stuff started getting political.
Yeah, I think things went sideways in a lot of ways. Maybe they'll go back around. Maybe they'll get turned back around. I enjoyed my time in the 82nd Airborne Division up and down Ardennes. What do you remember about Ardennes in particular?
Here we go all the way every day. Oh my gosh, every morning, man.
Yeah, dude.
We would get up and you'd have the music playing and running and do you remember the one time? Now we went on a foot march. We were going down what's that? Fire Break 6 down there in the backside of division headquarters, and we heard a bunch of sirens. And I write about this in the book too. And that was the harsh. There was a shooting.
Yeah, Tau Stadium.
Tau Stadium, yeah.
Yeah.
And special forces candidates took down the shooter himself. Yeah. I remember that. Yeah, that was a big one right there. And when you're talking about Ardennes Street, that was a big deal. I remember we heard the sirens, and we were coming up on the backside of the hill, heading towards division headquarters on Fire Break 6. And we heard all the sirens. I was like, what's going on? Must be a fire or something. And by the time we got back to the barracks, they had us in formation, and they told us to go upstairs, get our ID cards. And then we had like mandatory urinalysis right there. And they started searching our rooms and this and that. And we really didn't even know what was going on. And when we come to find out, there was a shooting at across the street from the 325 area.
Yeah, so that's Kreutzer. I got to be very familiar with him and his file. I worked at CID for a year, and I got access to his file. I read every bit of it, all of it, and and his former platoon sergeant was my buddy, a black hat. Of mine, a good buddy of mine, and so he told me about all of it. That guy Kreutzer was the basic thing that set him off was that they took his remote control and hid it from him for his TV. That's what set him off.
Like fellow soldiers.
Yeah. So this guy was out there. He was a malcontent. He was someone that was on the edge of polite society. He had visions of, I don't know, whatever. And he had picked up a few guns over the years that people stored at their house for him. He didn't lock them up in the arms room. You know how he stored them at somebody's house. You know how we did it back then.
Oh, yeah.
And so but his platoon mates picked on him, incessantly picked on him. And you've seen soldiers that people pick on. Yeah. And they stole his remote control, and he wrote this long letter that I read. It's really wild, a diatribe about life. And he went and told his buddy to get him his guns. He went and got them, and he told his platoon, he goes, "If I'm not in formation, don't march down there." And
wow.
One of the guys that was in his platoon ended up not going. He said, "I'm not going down there. I'm not." And he stepped out. But the only reason Kreutzer didn't shoot the people he wanted to shoot was because the formation got reversed. And so Kreutzer was confused. Yeah.
I heard that. I heard they at the last minute, because if you remember, they were doing their brigade run. That's how we would always form up and then start our brigade run, and they flip-flop companies or something to that effect.
Yeah. He did. And he got whooped up. Them SF guys whooped his.
I heard they broke his jaw, dude. Yeah.
I'm telling you, they took care of him. They took care of him.
God, yeah, I remember that, man. That was one of my first experiences in the 82nd, man. I was like, what? Somebody's shooting up other soldiers. Jesus.
Yeah. I was down at Jumpmaster school when it happened. I'll never forget the sirens either. I was a hat at that point. And sad day. Such a sad day in division. Such a sad day.
Yeah, I remember that distinctly. And wasn't that was like 95, I think. Yeah, somewhere 95.
Yeah, probably.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Probably.
Yeah. Wow. Short memories. But see, all that stuff is everything that we keep in our heads, man, that, a lot of people don't really even realize, it's not all about Afghanistan and Iraq and all this and that. There's a lot of stories that happen right there on base that you just keep in your head, your whole life.
Oh yeah. Well, hey, I've enjoyed hanging out with you. It's been a blast. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate it. I have not read all of your book yet, but I have. I read some of it the other night on the air, but I've definitely read this one cover to cover. Really.
Basically, Lifer is division on steroids, is what it really is, man. I take some stuff out and I put some stuff in there and I clean it up, man. So yeah.
I tell you what, I think that you're a great author. I think that you're an awesome paratrooper and a leader. Thank you for your leadership in your community as a high school teacher and just an overall great guy. Thank you very much. I appreciate it,
All right. Well, thank you for having me, and it was good being with you and your guests. I appreciate it, brother.
Oh, I love it. I love it. All right. Bye, everybody.
All right. Take care, everybody.